Hello and welcome to this morning's Lightning Talks session. I'm Carmen Talbot and I'm the Project Manager for Heritage Digital. In this session, we are going to hear from 4 fantastic individuals from across the heritage sector talking about a digital innovation, project or skill they've implemented on a low or even better, no budget at all. Some of the people you're going to hear from have done this across the coronavirus pandemic, so it's up to the minute innovations. What's going to happen in this session is that we're going to watch the presentations, first of all, one after the other. So 4 presentations, around 20 to 25 minutes. And then at the end, we'll have 15, maybe 20 minutes of Q&A with our fantastic speakers. So if you've got any questions at all, pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and then we'll get to as many as we possibly can, but there are a lot of people at this event today. So if we don't get a chance to get to your question, we'll try and discuss it on Twitter afterwards or in the Heritage Digital closed Facebook group that you should have had the information from at the beginning of this session. First up this morning, we are going to hear from Millie Carroll of York Museums Trust, talking about a social media sensation that you may have heard about, Curator Battle.
Hi, I'm Millie. I am Digital Communications Officer at York Museums Trust. When I finished uni, I went to work for York Sculpture Park as a marketing assistant, and then I went to work for the Tetley Art Gallery in Leeds as a marketing officer. And now I have decided to almost specialise in digital marketing. So that's why I applied for this role at York Museums Trust. And it's almost like a tagline I say a lot, but I try and put social in social media. While I've been working at the Trust, I've been there just almost a year. And I've been trying to engage our audiences in different ways. York Museums Trust, if you don't know, looks after the Yorkshire Museum, the York Art Gallery and York Castle Museum, and also York Museum Gardens. So we own a few different sites and look after almost 3 million objects in our collections as well. So the impact of coronavirus on York Museums Trust was huge. We are paid for organisation and we charge ticketing to get into our sites. So we closed all sites, including the gardens, from March until we opened the gardens in June, and then we opened 2 of our sites, York Castle Museum and York Art Gallery, in August. But it had a huge financial impact on the Trust, as it has on most museums and galleries. And so we really realised we had to do as much as we can digitally and online to try and not only engage audiences and retain their interest in us, but do fundraising and try and keep the image of York Museums Trust alive in people's minds during lockdown. So Curator Battle was an idea that we came up with in March. When lockdown happened, we had these weekly content meetings, and it wasn't just the marketing team, it was curatorial, digital, learning and engagement, outreach. Those of us who weren't furloughed, the small team, worked together and came up with ideas that we wanted to do during lockdown. One of those was Curator Battle. And it was great having this cross-department approach, because the ideas we came up with were ones that I wouldn't have thought of on my own or had capacity to do myself. And we realised that a lot of museums were in the position that we were, trying to think of online content while not being in museums. You know, everybody was working from home, really. So it was, what do we have assets to, and what can we create online? So we came up with, let's all get together, let's museums get together and feed this hunger for digital engagement that people had during lockdown. So Curator Battle essentially was the Yorkshire Museum putting a challenge out there, a weekly theme, and asking people to be our objects. So the first one we came up with was quite against the grain anyway. It was the dullest object, which you wouldn't expect museums to talk about online. And we shared like a little piece of iron. It actually had an amazing history, but it was just a little piece of iron. It was something that you wouldn't probably have out on display. And it went great, and we had probably about 60 museums engaged with our first battle. One of the best was like a curator from the British Museum replied with, it was literally a stick made of wood, and that's what it said on the online collections page, a stick made of wood, and that's it. So I think the audiences enjoyed seeing stuff that museums don't usually talk about, not big star, shiny objects, stuff that we have in our collections. Museums have, you know, millions and millions of objects that we don't get to show all the time. So I think that's why Curator Battle was working. It grew and grew. We actually did 19 weeks of Curator Battle, and yeah, every week it kind of more and more audiences from around the world got involved, because everybody wanted to engage with people online, and it was such a easy, simple way to do, and for people to connect and yeah, be social, whether it was museums being social with other museums or audiences chatting to other audiences. It was really a great idea that came across pretty much because our whole team, whole departments at the Yacht Museums Trust worked together to think of an idea that everybody would be interested in. In terms of planning Curator Battle, we would have weekly meetings, and in those meetings, I or comms would usually think of 2 themes. Say they were fantastic footwear and best hat. And we would put this to the team, and we would think of objects that we had in our collections that could work. Now, it was great having someone from different teams there, because, for example, a curator could think of an object that we didn't have a good digital asset for. So digital would either try and Photoshop or create a GIF or something that would work. And then learning would try and think if there was an engagement poll or something we could follow up with on our website. It was definitely a big team effort, and that's how it worked kind of every week. We would put loads of themes then to our curators, and we'd see which work, because there were some themes that we would love to do, but we just couldn't get the assets for because the museums weren't open, and that was just a learning curve. And we tried to think of themes that every museum could get involved with or would have assets for, so quite broad themes, and I think that did kind of pull off. And so on a Thursday before Curator Battle, I'd put a poll out there with 2 themes, and museums and the public would vote on which one they wanted. And that kind of asked everybody and made sure everybody was okay, and it gave them kind of 24 hours to think of an object, so we weren't just springing it on museums, because that's how it started at first. We would just be like, Curator Battle's happening, here's a theme, think of something. And I think during lockdown it was a lot to ask, because everybody was really stretched, so giving everybody that little bit of time was great. Curator Battle also had no budget. We didn't pay to promote it. We didn't commission any new photography or film. It was just using the assets that we had, and it was just time capacity. That's what took. I mean, when I launched it on a Friday, it would take me my whole day of working just to reply like memes back to other people and to keep the thread alive. So it did take a lot in terms of capacity, but financially it was nothing. But we did ask like other press outlets that we knew to help share and to put it out there in the media, in the news world as well. So that worked. But yeah, it was pretty much just using our connections and using our time. So the impact Curator Battle had was huge, not only on ourselves but other organisations as well. But for example, Creepiest Objects, which is our biggest Curator Battle to date, which was in April, had over 13,000 likes on the post, but it actually had over 1 million engagements on that thread, which was insane. It was numbers that we'd not thought we could achieve. And Curator Battle as the whole 19 weeks was seen by 5.5 million people, which was amazing. And so it's not just stats for us though. Other museums, for example, Fairfax House in York saw engagement rise by 814% after taking part in Curator Battle. A lot of other museums saw an increase in followers and an increase in engagement, which was amazing for us, as we like to say that we're digital leaders at Yacht Museums Trust, and I think that shows that we did that. But then also it had an impact on people as well. Well-being was something that we really wanted to make sure people felt something during lockdown, and 83% agreed or strongly agreed that they felt connected with others when taking part in Curator Battle during lockdown, which is amazing. 50% of those people had never engaged with York Museums Trust before. And then 96% of these people that we polled after Curator Battle said they would look for something similar. So not only does it, again, like I said, affect us, but these people now are seeking other digital experiences like Curator Battle, which is amazing. And it kind of showed it reached that mainstream audience because the press coverage we had. I mean, we were on BBC Have I Got News For You, we were on CNN News, Fox News, we had radio coverage in Australia, in Asia. It was absolutely huge. Every continent pretty much covered it, and it's still carrying on. So BBC Arts have asked us to join in with their Museum Passion campaign that they're running in October. So Curator Battle is coming back for the first time since we stopped it at the end of July. So we're really pleased that we can still partner with these news outlets to kind of create something that's exciting for audiences and museums alike.
Hello, my name's Ed McGregor. I'm a local community officer for the Churches Conservation Trust, and I've been asked to put together a brief presentation for you about some of the digital audio guides that I have been making for our churches. So here we go. So a little bit about the Churches Conservation Trust. So we're the national charity protecting historic churches at risk. So we care for over 350 churches all over England. They're all grade 1 or 2-star listed historic buildings. And they've all been declared redundant by the Church of England. So they've been taken out of active use, as it were, by the Church of England. They're still all consecrated buildings, so they can be used for services and are used for services. But we try to find alternative uses for them and make sure they're open for visitors to appreciate as spaces of historic interest. So the challenge that we faced is that we had a lot of old, and also out of print interpretation. So here's a picture of one from St Mary's in Maddington. You see black and white pictures, old redundant churches fund logo, which is the worst bit of branding ever in the history of branding, I think. So we changed our name in 1996, I think. And yeah, very verbose, lots of very small black and white text, with lots of technical jargon, ecclesiastical terminology in there. So not the most user-friendly to navigate, and we didn't have any budget to develop any other kind of interpretation at most of our sites. So what we're going to do, oh, hang on, let me move my screen a bit. So we had a marketing officer who was she was a maternity cover, and she was over from the United States of America, and what she was doing over the weekends was going out to visit historic churches. And she went to this one at St Mary's, Kempley in Gloucestershire, which reputedly has the oldest store in England. A lovely picture of it here. I'm not allowed to talk about this church because it's not one of Churches Conservation Trust's ones, but she visited and she had a great experience whereby she scanned in a QR code and automatically got a audio guide on her phone, which took her around the church and taught her all about it. And she came into the office the following day and was telling me all about this website called Easy Travel, IZI Travel, which I'd never heard of. I must admit I was a bit skeptical at first. It looked a bit gimmicky, but it's a really great website and app which lets you record and produce online audio guides. It's, well, some of the good things about it, it's completely free to use. It's very easy and intuitive to use, both for the visitor and for the person that's uploading the content, i.e. me or the volunteers I work with. And it's got kind of location, so because it works on your phone as an app, you can either scan a QR code to get your relevant guide up, or you can just, when you've got the app on and location turned on, it will tell you where your nearest audio guides are. So very intuitive, fast to use. So I started producing audio guides on this easy travel thing. The only investment we made, and I had this already actually, but a digital audio recorder just gets a good quality sound. About £70 this one was. You could use it on, just record the audio files on your phone now. Everyone's got a smartphone these days. This I like because it had a USB connection and also a micro SD card, so it's really easy to get the files off here onto your computer to upload them. And subsequently, so on Easy Travel and working with volunteers around the churches, I have, we've created 8 audio guides now for different churches. They're all completely free to use, and yeah, very, very simple to do. Easy Travel is great as well because it's got a useful, helpful back end to the website. You can see you've got kind of sections where you get all of your reviews, you get kind of your statistics about how many visits you're getting, and it's all incredibly simple. So yeah, it's also great. The outcomes, the positive outcomes of doing this is it's been great for us. We get lots of nice reviews from people, and visitors experience extra depth of our building when they've got some kind of interpretation for them to use. Also, given the current climate and with us having to remove all of our printed interpretation that we do have from our churches, it's great because this is online and it only relies on people touching their own phones. It's been really great for working with volunteers as well, though, because I found it's a nice project to work with existing volunteers or even new people around the churches, and you just say, take the old guidebook, kind of read through that very verbose and dense information and try and condense it down in much more digestible script, maybe with like 10 points of interest around your church, and then to record that in short, concise snippets. It's an easy project, but a really nice one to start involving volunteers with. You also have the potential to develop kind of exhibitions. Once you've done your audio guide on here, you can create kind of subsections of it called exhibitions. So I don't think I'll have time in this talk, but one at St John on the Wall Church in Bristol, we've developed a separate exhibition for Heritage Open Days. And yeah, one volunteer that really took to this and actually did 3 of our audio guides, or kind of led on pulling those together, was awarded the Digital Volunteer of the Year award from the Marsh Christian Trust. So that was great acknowledgement of his work and contribution to ours. I don't think I've got time to do this one now actually, but this is the link to the Alabaster Dolphin. It's actually a Middle English poem which we tried to do a trail around the church based on old medieval poetry. So not part of our usual guide, but a nice little add-on, and you can always, with Easy Travel, you can always go and add these extra bits in. So thank you. If you've got any questions at all, I think this is pre-recorded, but in the next bit you can ask me questions, but here's my details if you want to get in touch.
Hi, I'm Kara Harper. I was Head of Marketing and Communications for Shuttleworth Trust. I also looked after the education. Now I'm a museum freelancer and I'm a volunteer for the Shuttleworth Veteran Aeroplane Society, or SVS, which is a support organisation for Shuttleworth that looks after volunteers and fundraising. So I ran a couple of digital engagement projects during the COVID lockdown, and a couple of the key questions for me originally were, would our customer base, who tends to be very hands-on, very engaged, they like being on site like that, smell the aircraft and exhibits, would they actually want to get involved with digital? Secondly, would they pay for digital content? And thirdly, could I still offer content for free? And probably fourth, what was the longevity of the project? Now, being able to offer paid content was important because Shuttleworth is a self-funding museum. It relies on daily admissions, it relies on airshow income. Because of the COVID shutdown, we lost all of daily admissions for a couple of months, and we lost the first 4 airshows, couldn't go ahead. Also, we have a very engaged customer base and very engaged volunteers, and not being able to come on site was quite hard for a lot of the people. They felt very, very engaged, and they wanted to stay engaged with Shuttleworth, and that was very important to me also. I ran 2 sessions, Ask the Pilot and Aviation Art for All. Ask the Pilot was a paid session, the Art for All was free, and they're both based on sessions I already offered that were in-person sessions that we already knew the format for. So normally an Ask the Pilot session, pilot chat when it's delivered in the flesh, takes place at an air show. The pilot does 10 to 15 minutes in front of an aircraft. They run through, talk about the technical side of the aircraft, handling characteristics, the quirky background on it, but also they take questions from customers, and also they bring their own experiences of flying the aircraft to it as well, which makes it quite nice and engaging. It's limited to what you can do at pilot chat. People don't get the chance to climb the aircraft or anything like that, but they do get to ask questions live. Now, originally I thought we were going to run the Ask the Pilot sessions in the same way. So I talked to 3 or 4 pilots that were really up for giving it a go. None of us had a huge amount of experience working with digital, but it seemed like the perfect opportunity to try it. Normally the pilot chats, once they've been recorded, I put them up onto Vimeo and then host them on Vimeo, put them onto our website if it's free content. You don't pay for them again. And as far as longevity of the project, now normally we offer pilot chats and sort of talks that you pay for during the spring and autumn months only. We don't do it in summer because we're doing live pilot chats and we're very, very busy with air shows. And in the wintertime, the hangars are too cold. So I was already looking for something to fill the gap on whether we could offer something online. The positive side of COVID was it meant everybody, all of our customer base seemed to be extremely willing to at least give technology a bit of a try, which was really cool. And so we decided, okay, let's run Ask the Pilot. Now, they were 45-minute sessions on Zoom. I ran them as paid workshops, so I had everybody book online. I had 2 pricing structures, so you could pay £5 or £10. £10 was £5 plus donation. You were in exactly the same session, you got exactly the same content, the same participation. The multiple pricing structure had worked quite well in our things that I tried. People liked the choice of deciding whether they wanted to make a donation or they just wanted to pay for what they were getting. Originally, I was going to run it exactly the same as pilot chat so that people would throw questions into the mix, and it became really obvious when we'd done a couple of test run-throughs, it really wasn't going to work because we wanted the main person speaking to be the key person on screen, the big picture on screen in Zoom. What I did instead was take the participation list from the online bookings, emailed everybody and said, please send your 5 top questions and the pilots will answer these on the day. I gave them to pilots in advance. What pilots did was they worked them into their sessions so that it was very natural, it's quite fluid, and they were having a good time with each other. The theme of the workshop was the racing aircraft. They're 1930s, they're Art Deco, they've got really nice lines, they're thrilling, they're exciting, and I already knew that customers like to engage with content about these particular aircraft. They found them exciting, so it seemed like a good draw to experiment to see whether we could actually get people to book onto paid content. We broadcast live in the hangars, so we had 2 pilots within the hangars. They had to be, because it was social distancing, one did one aircraft, so Jean-Michel was doing Comet, Stuger was doing the Mughal, and we then had the other 2 pilots were at their own individual homes. And what we found was the sound quality in the hangar wasn't brilliant. Shuttleworth didn't have access to its own equipment really. This was an experiment, so we were using our own equipment, and the camera quality varied, the sound recording quality varied. And the other thing that the guys were doing, normally I would kind of go through it with them and show them how I would do it, because we were all social distancing, they were kind of experimenting themselves. And what they were tending to do was, rather than use the tablets, the cameras as a fixed point and then move around in front of it, they were moving the cameras with them, which affected the quality of the video a little bit and affected some of the way the sound was relayed because it was live. But overall, the outcome of it, when I ran surveys for customers, they were incredibly supportive. I think we had a very small number of people that had technical difficulties, which they put down to their end. So the ones, I did run Survey Monkeys afterwards, and there were people that said they probably wouldn't book again because their internet couldn't cope with it, would still recommend it to their friends, which was really nice of them. And the feedback we got about things like the sound and that, it was all very constructive. It wasn't a complaint. It was all very, maybe this could be adjusted, that didn't quite work, but it was really, really helpful, really positive, and it was it was a great fun experience for all of us. I ran the admin side on the day, so I was admitting people, letting people in now, and looking at the participation list. The other thing I was going to do was going to check the participation list to see if we had the same people that had booked on, just make sure that it was the same list of people. However, we found very, very quickly that people named their devices all kinds of random things, so that really wasn't going to work either. The overall experience for the pilots was that it was a little strange for them because they were obviously looking at camera and they couldn't see the audience. Normally they would see the audience directly, but they were used to giving talks and used to working with each other, so that worked really, really well. And the fact that people were actually willing to pay for digital content, and most of the people that booked on were people that were familiar with Shuttleworth already, but the potential to run it from multiple locations, run it with partnership organisations, so you could be offering more interesting packages, and getting the word out there so people from further afield would actually book onto it, which I think we had 2 or 3, is certainly there. And overall, I would highly recommend the experience. It was fantastic. It was a very, very nerve-wracking because we were not sure quite how it was going to go. But the customers were so nice, so supportive, and really willing to give it a go, which was, I couldn't recommend that highly enough. My details are here at the end of it. If anybody wants to talk about digital products or talk what they're doing or ask any questions, please do get in touch. And thank you very much for letting me present this.
Hello, I'm Dominic Tinley. I'm a freelance digital advisor and I've been working with the charity Waterloo Uncovered since the start of this summer. Waterloo Uncovered is a charity that combines 2 things. Firstly, world-class archaeology, and secondly, the recovery and rehabilitation of military veterans. We've been excavating the battlefield of Waterloo in Belgium since 2015, and we've supported over 100 veterans in the process to cope with some of the physical and mental impacts of their service. What's different about this year is we couldn't go on the annual dig, and that's where I got involved to help the charity improve its digital content. Now, I can't possibly tell you everything we've done over the summer in 5 minutes, so I want to focus on 3 things in particular, 3 really important things in planning any web development. And those are audiences, tools, and iteration. First of all, audiences, and I'm sure most of you know that if you're designing any service, you should think about what your users want and what your users need. But another important consideration is where your users are. And in our case, we knew that a lot of people were subscribed to our YouTube channel. So instead of building our website, making our website amazing, we concentrated a lot of our effort on making really good quality video material, which we could put in 2 places. Firstly, we could upload it to YouTube, and secondly, we could then embed the video on our own site. And a really important thing to note here is that when you get to the end of the video, there's a small piece of code, which a lot of people forget about, which makes sure that all the extra videos you're then told about are videos which we have produced that are in our own channel. It's a really important piece of code to add. The second point I wanted to make is about tools. Now, we were very lucky in that our site was already in WordPress. And WordPress is a great open source tool, and it's also, as they say, trusted by many. So 38% of the web use WordPress, according to their stats. And I think it's probably, in the case of charities, it's more than that, because certainly charities that I've been involved with, it's very popular. And just on a call earlier this week, where there was a group of charities, I would say around 60 or 70% of those charities were using WordPress. Now, WordPress is great because it's free, but you can't always rely on free tools. And another important change we made at Waterloo Uncovered this summer was to migrate the newsletter from the mailing list from something which wasn't working very well to MailChimp, which, although it potentially costs a bit more money, is a much more reliable tool. So there's a balance there between free and reliable. WordPress doesn't do everything out of the box, so any WordPress site relies on a whole number of plugins. And when we chose the plugins that we were using, we tried to get rid of anything that was not very well supported and instead focus on things that had really high star ratings, really updated very often with a large number of active installations that are well tested on the latest versions of WordPress. So there's definitely safety in numbers. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about is iteration. So our website has changed from looking like this in May to looking like this now. And that wasn't an overnight change. I mean, you might say it hasn't changed all that much. And I think that's quite important because it does mean that people coming back to the site still know where to find things. We still have navigation bar across the top. We've changed the navigation bar to focus more on the audiences that we know we have. So as I mentioned earlier, we are concerned with veterans and archaeology. And then we've also built this new area called Explore, which is where the general audience can come and find interesting and hopefully engaging content. So the way we've managed to iterate is we've built what's called a staging environment, which is we have 3 complete copies of the site running in parallel to each other. We have a development site, which is where our trainee developer can go and experiment to his heart's content. He can break things, try things, and he knows that he's not going to break the live site, really importantly. So it gives him freedom to experiment. Secondly, we have a staging environment, which is where the content editor can go and update pages, and she can test things, try things out, run them past other members of the team before they go live. And then finally, we have a live site, which is only ever edited through the other 2 that I mentioned. And in this case, you see the red bar at the top, that's only visible to people who are logged into the backend WordPress, but that's to warn me that we're on the public site. And the way we're using a tool called WP Staging, which costs about £80, I think. And it's as simple to update the website once you've made a change to one part. It's as simple as pushing a button. And then you get a little warning message. And it just takes a few minutes to copy any changes you've made from one site to the other with the full confidence that you've got a backup should anything go wrong. I won't sit and watch this progress bar because there's almost nothing more boring than watching someone else's progress bar. But if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to take them after the end of this video. Thanks very much.
For fantastic lightning talks there by Millie, Ed, Kira and Dominic. Now I'm going to ask them all to join us back in this virtual room and take some of your questions that have been popping up. We're all here. Fantastic. Right, well, we've got 6 open questions in the Q&A. Pop any more you've got in there. We'll try and get through as many as we possibly can in sort of 6-7 minutes before we move on to the next session. So first off, back to Dominic, a question from Sarah. What's the special bit of code for YouTube?
Right.
We definitely need to know this.
Yes. Well, maybe there's a chat or a mail that will go out afterwards. I can just pop that in there. I won't read it out. It's not very interesting to read out.
Okay.
But yes, I can pop that in. I can pop that in your notes that go out at the end. So
that would be fantastic. But as a quick note, it's an easy job to do?
Yeah, it's just a little tiny bit of code that you put on the end of a video. YouTube keep changing the code to try and drive people further around their own site and other people's content. But yeah, there is still a piece of code you can put on the end of your videos when you embed them in your page, and that will ensure that you only see videos on your own channel.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, Ed, we've got one here from Beth that says, do you need to download the Easy Travel app to access the tools, or can you just access them via the QR code? I suppose that's interesting because QR codes are becoming so much more familiar to so many people, scanning them in a restaurant or a workplace, something that's super relevant to now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you can just use, so it's accessible online. Sorry, there's a spin cycle on our washing machine just starting, so this might be a bit noisy. But yeah, I think you can just use it on the website without having the app on your phone. So in that way, yeah, you wouldn't need to download the app, but it does work a lot smoother, and you can't use the location function. And I think it doesn't look quite as nice if it's not on the app. But yeah, I think it definitely is possible not to have, if you're worried, and I understand visitors might be worried about downloading an app that they've never heard of before, then you can get around that.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, one that is very much for Millie here. How often should we be posting on digital channels and platforms? Ideally per day or per week? The question asker here isn't really sure how much is too much and how much is too little. So what from your experience is the sweet spot?
Sadly, I don't think there is an answer, in that I think every organisation is different. Each platform works quite differently as well. I think Twitter's a platform that's quite fast moving, that you probably could post 3 or 4 times a day and it would be fine. Whereas I think if you did that on Facebook, you'd probably annoy quite a few people. So it really depends on what you've got to say. If you think you're posting too much, is it just that you're posting not the right content? Post stuff that you genuinely think that your audiences will be interested in and want to hear. I think what a lot of organisations fall into the trap in, and I've definitely done it in the past, is like copying an old post and just reposting it just for something to post. And it's definitely not, it's not going to get you the engagement that you want. I think spend time and produce higher quality content and maybe do it less than try and get something out every day on every platform. I probably post like 5 times a week on Facebook, 5 times on Instagram, and maybe every day on Twitter if I can. But again, if I don't, I don't. Like, don't beat yourself up about it.
And is there anything to follow on from that? Just from my perspective, are there any tools that you use to optimize those posting times in terms of where you're seeing your audience are most engaging with the stuff you're putting out?
I mean, if you look at your analytics, especially like Facebook's quite easy to see when your audiences are online, and you'll kind of just get used to what you're posting when is working, and it's all trial and error. I think everybody's got to do it, but sadly there isn't, I guess, like a set thing for everybody. I mean, I run the accounts of quite a few of our museums, and everyone is different just at our site, so I can't give everyone an answer, but yeah, I think just try and understand your audience as much as possible, trial and error, and yeah, you'll probably get to something that works for you, but don't worry about posting something all the time. It's definitely better to hold back and keep, like I said, generate more exciting and engaging content than just put something out that is come today. You know, it's probably not going to get you exactly what you need.
Brilliant, thank you. Now we've got one here that is also very much for Kira, I think. Clarissa says, something I've noticed during lockdown was that the audiences were more forgiving. Live streams don't have to be perfect. Content didn't need to be polished to perfection. I found that people valued content that they found authentic. Do you think this trend will continue, or was it just over lockdown? And I think this can really relate to your experience of the Zoom events.
I think it will absolutely continue. Yeah, I think people enjoyed the genuine content, and polished is sometimes a little bit overrated. People like to feel that they could maybe become part of the story themselves, so they could also create some content or engage with you with their own homemade content. So if they feel that you're not perfect, they also don't have to be perfect. So I think it will continue.
Great. And a question here that may relate to any one of you, actually, knowing that you all sort of interact with volunteers. Maya says, how, as a volunteer, can I use my limited time to manage and create content on social media? So we can extend that out to the other platforms that you're using. Does anyone have an answer for that?
I was just sort of building on something that Millie was talking about. I think what's so great about what you've done there is that you started a conversation. You weren't just broadcasting to people, so you don't have to worry too much. I mean, you can spend hours analysing your statistics, but actually if you just start a conversation with people, so you went to a free platform and you started asking people questions, and then you started to get feedback, and it's as simple as that. You don't have to sort of, lots of people say, oh God, we've got to have a strategy for this, and we've got to plan when we're going to do it, what times of day, but to simply start and get on with it. It's just such a brilliant example of a low budget project, which is what we're talking about today, to just start a conversation on a platform where you know that your audience are. So that would be my advice.
Fantastic. Anybody else with a thought on that? Ed?
I would just say, I mean, for us, our challenge there was addressing the fact that we had literally no interpretation at our sites. And I don't know if that's a thing during COVID. We've had to remove all printed interpretation from our sites as well. And certainly using Easy Travel, it takes like a day, half a day to record the content, maybe a day to put together a quick tour of a building with like 10 points off it. So it's really quick and easy to do. And if creating one bit of interpretation, easy to use interpretation, is the thing that a volunteer wants to do, then I would recommend using Easy Travel and doing the kind of thing I did. But each site's different, and yeah.
Now, another one for you. I'm actually going to bring you back in for possibly our last question. I know we've run a little bit over, but we've also had less time to ask these questions. What do you find is the optimum duration of content linked to each QR code? That's from Nick. So with your kind of audio guide snippets, what's the best amount of time?
Sorry, this is one for me.
Yes.
With the audio guide snippets, what's the best amount of time?
Yeah.
It's about people's attention spans, really, isn't it? And I think you can never underestimate people's attention span. So keep it as short and snappy as possible would be my recommendation with anything that you're doing. And on the platform that I've used in that instance, you can just break it up into loads of different sections. So we're particularly talking about churches. You have one snippet of audio for the font, one snippet of audio for one stained glass window, and just break it up as much as possible so people can go right to the thing that they are interested in rather than having to go through a big long recording. So
that sounds fantastic. Thank you. Well, I think that's all we're going to have time for today on the Q&A front, because we've got our next webinar coming up that should have started a few minutes ago. So it just remains for me to say thank you to Millie, Ed, Dominic and Kira for taking part in the lightning talks today.